I sat at my desk so long that one day I couldn't stand up straight.
When I met you, I'm like, we have to do this episode. People need to hear what you're talking about.
And I felt like I was buying my life back.
And it's never too late to take a look and say, it's okay to change course.
And he pointed his finger in my face and he said, "You don't have free time. Your time is my time."
Law firm success strategies will begin after a brief word from today's sponsor, Answering Legal. Visit answeringlegal.com to learn more about our virtual receptionist team.
So I do residential real estate, primarily landlord-tenant. My area of practice is high volume. It's a lot of clients and it's a lot of calls that I get. Before Answering Legal, I would have to take every single call or know that it was going to a voicemail and likely to another attorney. So it has been crucial for me to have Answering Legal and to have a live person answering the call and being the first line of contact for a prospective client.
Hey there, welcome to Law Firm Success Strategies. We're a podcast designed to help law firm leaders accelerate success so you can live the life you deserve. I'm your host, Doug Brown, the law firm leadership coach. And when I'm not doing this podcast, I'm an advisor who helps leaders implement growth and success and strategies to build a firm that lasts so you can live a life you deserve. Catching a theme there? I am so excited to present this episode where we're welcoming Dena Lefkowitz. She's an experienced lawyer, career coach, and an author of Winning in Your Own Court, 10 Laws for a Successful Career Without Burning Out. And Dena, welcome. When I met you, I'm like, we have to do this episode. People need to hear what you're talking about. I'm really excited to have you on today.
I'm glad the day is finally here.
So why don't you tell me a little bit? I'm intrigued by by your book. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and how did you come to write this book?
When I graduated from law school, I thought everything was done and that all I had to do was sail into my first job where I would be an enormous success and I would make a lot of money and all the hard stuff was behind me. And when I entered private practice, I realized that there was a whole skill set that they didn't even talk about or mention in law school, that skill set is essential to being successful in private practice. Things like getting clients, getting promoted, getting along with other people, and getting a new job if the first one that you picked out of law school isn't a perfect match. I wasn't prepared for any of those things, especially the rainmaking part. That is a separate skill. And I know many lawyers, and there are many listening to this right now, who didn't realize that sales was going to be a huge part of success in a law firm scenario. I'm not talking about in-house lawyers. I'm not talking about government lawyers. I'm talking about lawyers who decide to go into the private practice of law. And if you don't have a book of business, at some point it's going to derail your career. And I didn't know that when I went to law school.
Yeah, there are a lot of unwritten rules and traps that for the unwary, well-intentioned lawyer.
That's why I decided to write them down.
So that's what your book is. Your book is about.
Yes, 10 Laws for a Successful Career Without Burning Out or Selling Out. Because I've seen lawyers do both, and I've done both.
Yeah, me too. So tell me about your journey, where you said, I've gone from this place and I've learned these lessons and I've had this situation. I need to write this down. What was the moment that led you to that?
I chose law as the default career, like many people do. We graduate from college, we have political science, English degrees, whatever, and we don't know what we're going to do. And we've heard of two careers, doctor and lawyer. And so many of us just throw a dart at what we think will be a high-paying and rewarding, prestigious career, and we take our chances. And that's exactly what I did. I had no idea what the actual life of a lawyer was like the day-to-day. I just went to law school and assumed the rest would take care of itself. So I drifted into my first job after law school, which was at a litigation firm. So I became a litigator without even really thinking about, do I like to fight? I don't even like sending food back in restaurants. And here I was signing up for a career where I'm going to have to be arguing all the time. So I saw that I had made a bad decision. And then I had a really hard time recasting myself.
Mm.
I was trying to get a job outside of litigation, and every interview I got was for jobs that were in litigation. I couldn't figure out how to pivot to another role, and a career coach helped me. And one thing that we did was evaluate my values. And I threw a dart at a high paying career. But when we looked at my values, it actually turned out that helping people was way more important to me than making huge amounts of money. So the thing that I was tilted towards was not really the thing that was going to bring me happiness. And one of the reasons I was tilted toward it is because I grew up in a large family that didn't have a lot of money, and I put myself through college and law school. So making money was very important to me. And if you ask most people about their values, we will all say the same things: family, security. But when you rank your values and you actually see what's important to you, you make different decisions about how you're going to spend your time and who you're going to spend it with.
In your work, do you find that lawyers are reluctant to be that introspective about their values?
Not the people who come to me. I guess I get a self-selected group of people that are searchers, that want to make the best out of their careers, that see that working with a coach can actually propel them to success. And they're willing to do the personality assessment to figure out what they need to learn.
I think that's right. That the more in touch with the idea that you are curious about how to make things better, it makes you a better leader and avoids a whole lifetime of, well, I made this. And if you think about it, we say it out loud. You said it a moment ago. We make a choice about a career in our early 20s. What do we actually know in our early 20s? We're kind of not much of anything. Not the least of which is about ourselves and what we really value. So this taking a look, and it's never too late to take a look and say, it's okay to change course. In your book, you talk about, assessing the situation and this idea of a sunk cost that I've come.
Yes.
So tell me more about what that is and why it's so important.
A sunk cost is money or time that you've expended that you can never get back, no matter what you do. Think of a gambler at a table. He spent a bunch of money, and then he throws one last bunch in because, hey, I might as well. I've invested this much already. But it's not an investment. Each decision to bet was a separate decision because you can never get the money that you spent back. So expenditures and investments act really differently, but people tend to lump them into the same category. An investment is something that can appreciate, that can generate income, and you don't have to do anything to get profit from an investment. You never have to put anything more in. You can if you want to, but it's there. It's going to grow or stay the same or shrink no matter what you do. An expenditure doesn't act the same way. You can spend a lot of money going to law school, and if you decide to stop being a lawyer, that money is already spent and you're not going to get it back. So considering it when you're making your future choices is misleading because it tends to hold you back from doing the thing that you really want to do. Probably the simplest example I can give is the potato chip. We've all had the feeling of dipping our hands into a bag of chips or nuts or something like that. And then we say, well, I ate one, I might as well finish the bag. That's the difference between an expenditure and an investment. Every chip is a separate decision. You didn't invest anything by eating a bunch of chips, and you didn't invest anything by going to law school. It was an expenditure that you thought was worthwhile at the time.
That's a fascinating way to look at it. When I made my various transitions, I did have to, and others have to deal with the fact that, you are on this path. You are a lawyer. Many people aspire to do that. Maybe you're a partner or aspiring associate with a great future ahead of you. And yet you allow yourself to look at values and you say there's a mismatch. And so you want to change course. But there's a lot of momentum to keep you from changing course, isn't there?
Oh my God, yes. There's the momentum of your own thoughts kind of telling you, well, you should stick with it since you already spent so much time and money doing this. There's everyone around you who agrees that you should stick with it. And there's also your career, the people that you're working with who think you're doing a good job and want to keep you doing that good job for them.
Do you find that maybe the people who come to you don't think this way, but maybe one of our listeners is that is there a reluctance to even start the process of considering other possibilities? Because I've seen that. I've seen the fear of, I don't want to start down this road because I might discover something that would make me change, and I don't really like change.
Right. Self-knowledge will propel you to make different decisions. And it's a funny thing about change. Even good change feels really uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Things like moving, getting married, they can come with serious moments of discomfort and doubt, even though it's good change. So you have to take a look at the feelings that are going on and determine whether it's your gut telling you it's a bad idea or whether it's your ego telling you to stay where you are because it's unsafe out there.
Yes, and I find an additional factor of this. If you feel like you should, like, I don't want to
Yes.
disappoint people. I'm a giver. I'm a provider. I made the transition from private practice to in-house. I know you did as well. Tell us a little bit about how you came to that story and how that, what kind of difference that made for you.
Well, it made a huge difference. I'll tell you the ending at the beginning. It made the biggest difference it could possibly make. When I realized that my values were around helping people, I saw that my career had been a through line of that. My very first job was working in a nursery school.
Hmm.
Then I worked in a daycare center to support myself through college. Then I was a waitress. Then I became a lawyer. Then I became a public service lawyer. And my whole life was about helping people when you look at it that way. And I could probably come up with more examples if I had more time of
Mhm.
situations that I was drawn to because I could be helpful. So when I was working with the career coach and we were looking at my values, an opportunity came up at the school district of Philadelphia. And it was just the perfect intersection of me discovering who I was and an available job that fit the values and my personality traits. And I decided to go in-house at the school district of Philadelphia. I became a charter school lawyer. I developed an area of expertise, which actually led to some amazing opportunities further down the road, both in private practice, in private companies, and in government. And it all started with looking at my values and deciding that making the most money wasn't important. I took a huge pay cut, Doug, to go to the school district of Philadelphia
I'm sure
from
you
private
did.
practice. And I felt like I was buying my life back. When I was in private practice, I was trying to do a hobby at one point because you let a lot of those things go.
Yeah.
And I was talking about it within earshot of my boss, and he blew up at me and he pointed his finger in my face and he said, "You don't have free time. Your time is my time."
Wow.
And I'm glad he said it to me, Doug, because it's an unwritten rule that most people don't say. But it was clear as day, and I could make the decision for myself. Do I want him to own me, or do I want to own myself?
That's why the values assessment is, and that introspection of what really matters is so important, because when I did it for the first time, and I've done a bunch of other things for myself and clients, I didn't have words to put against what I thought I knew what my values were, but I wasn't forced to rank or make choices so I didn't really have a criteria to judge opportunities against. I was responding opportunistically, moving from something that, well, this feels bad, maybe that'll feel better, but without any kind of standard or benchmark. And I think that's key for this, because there's pluses and minuses of being in-house. I mean, we're working with people, whether you're working with them on their career, or I'm helping, a solo practitioner, small firm lawyer try to transition into a bigger firm so that that's part of their succession plan. Culture match and values match is so important because we believe it's always better somewhere else. And we get enticed by the illusion that it will be, and then it's just a different ring of the same circus. So having that standard is super important. And also allowing yourself, I just have just another question, because I've found that a lot of lawyers, even litigators, have this need to serve people and almost can sometimes be this weird combination of perfectionism and people pleasing. And how did you give yourself permission to prioritize on yourself so that you could get to this place?
In a way that you really wouldn't want to. I sat at my desk so long that one day I couldn't stand up straight.
Oh, no.
And I was in horrendous back pain. And I hobbled from my office to my car and made it to a doctor and was diagnosed with spondylolisthesis. And he told me I had to lay flat on my back for 4 weeks. I couldn't even prop my head up to watch TV or read a book. I had to lie flat on my back. And boy, does that give you a chance to do some introspection.
And
I thought about, this is the worst part. Part of me was glad I was injured so I didn't have to go to work.
wow. And the lesson is, don't let yourself get to that point. I had my own story, which I've shared in other episodes, but you don't have to wait for some external force to come in and cause you to do this. I want to shift gears because you also talk in your book about how introverted lawyers can get comfortable with this idea of marketing and how they can use those skills kind of to pick two of the ideas and building a book of business. Maybe let's focus on kind of the first with the introverted lawyers, because that's a really interesting dynamic that's kind of hard to tackle. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it goes back to the problem I mentioned in law school, that they don't say anything about sales or business development or rainmaking. And most of us have a picture in our head of what a salesperson is, and we really don't like it. And I've had a lot of lawyers come to me to say, I don't want to be salesy, as if that's a descriptor of something, salesy. And so I think that the introverted person goes to law school because they love to read and write and work in solitude. And then they get into a profession where, in order to really be successful, you have to be able to bring in business. But you don't have to be salesy. You don't have to conform to any personality type that you think is the salesperson. The legal industry is the only industry that doesn't have a sales force. Every other type of profession can pay people to bring them their work, and lawyers can't. And so the way that we do it is by communicating our value to the people that are thinking about hiring a lawyer, and showcasing our brand, our skills, our signature style. And I worked with a woman who I did an assessment on, and out of 0 to 100, Doug, she was a 0 on sociability. This woman did not like hanging around with other people. That she just didn't need it or want it. But it turned into a bit of a superpower to her because she was also kind of bulletproof when it came to rejection. She did not give a damn if somebody rejected her. So she was able to go out and look for business and make connections and set up pitches. And, not being that outgoing, she wouldn't go to a pitch meeting by herself. She would bring somebody that was maybe a little bit more outgoing with her because, in my view, pitch meetings should never be done by one person. So it's always good to show who your team is that they're going to be hiring. And that's where you can bring in other people with other kinds of personalities. But introverts are typically good listeners. They have good memories. They understand things about people, and they care about the limited orbit that they are in. Introverts tend to have few friends, but the ones that they have are very important. So you can use these personality traits and attach them to networking activities. The introvert can write an article. The introvert can give a speech. Being an introvert is not about necessarily being afraid of public speaking. Those are two different things. Many politicians and actors are introverts. They can perform, but they're not as good at the one-on-one. So I hope I've given you an array of possibilities that an introverted person could look to for developing a marketing plan.
I think you have, because it opens, well, when you see examples, and if you're very analytical, you can look to examples and say, this, the way I process information, my introversion isn't an excuse to not go and build my book of business. It means I need to use different strategies
That's right.
and go to my strengths instead of trying to improve and try to be an extrovert. Because introversion and extroversion, an introvert can perform in an extroverted way for a limited period of time, and then they need to go back to their happy space and recharge.
Exactly. And I just want to say,
Go ahead.
I have introverted tendencies. When I was in private practice, I did not really want to be a rainmaker, but now I have my own business and I am a rainmaker. Well, when you really want something, you press yourself into service.
Yes. And you mentioned something a moment ago about fear of rejection. And you had that example of the person who had no fear of rejection, which I found it pretty unusual.
Yeah, it is. Most lawyers are thin-skinned.
Difficult to accept, but I've observed the same thing. So if somebody wanted to step into doing some marketing and they were worried about the fear of actual or perceived rejection, do you have a couple of tips they could keep in mind to help them get started?
Yes. One is start low stakes. If you're going to your first networking event, don't go with the idea of pitching yourself. Go with the idea of listening to people, asking good questions, and coming away with maybe some information or some names that you can follow up on. So don't try. A lot of young lawyers think that they're supposed to go out and get a big corporation as a client. It's just such a mistake. The thing to do when you're a young lawyer is to start networking, going to events, making friends, building your connections on LinkedIn, building your profile, building your thought leadership, building your social proof so that people will want to work with you and hire you. So joining something, joining a board, joining a club, you have to go out. I always think of the little piggies that you do on a child's toes. This little piggy went to market. This little piggy stayed home. If you stay home, there's a 0% of chance of anything happening. And if you go out, your chances increase exponentially.
Yes.
So-
And the mindset of even going to a marketing meeting to say, oh gosh, I gotta go do this. This is going to be horrible. It will be. If you look at it from a place of curiosity of I'm going to try to find somebody interesting and learn something new and play the long game. I mean, you're right. That's much lower stakes, because the work that a lawyer does in years 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 may not bear fruit until year 10.
Yes.
Which is why it's important to start early.
The other thing I have to suggest is learning about it. We're not taught how to network, so don't feel bad that you don't know how to do it. We're not taught to how to develop business. So don't feel bad. One of the reasons lawyers don't get started in business development is because it, it it's a hard feeling to not know how to do something. So we rush to the things we do know how to do. And we're
Mm.
also kind of a help resistant profession. When I mentioned that most lawyers are thin-skinned, that's not my opinion. That comes from Dr. Larry Richard, who has studied the lawyer brain and discovered 7 traits that are more present in lawyers than the general population.
Mm.
We're very thin-skinned. So even though we might be bullies in court and, big mouths in some arenas, on the inside, we are very afraid of being rejected, of having our expertise questioned, and of being wrong.
I've observed the same paradox where someone who is an outstanding litigator in a structured environment will have difficulty explaining his expectations to somebody in his office. And part of that is because there are no rules in the office. It's not a structured environment.
And none of
Um,
us, that's another skill that they don't teach in law school, management.
oh yeah, that's why I work with leaders and how to be a leader and how to, that's the foundation that they don't teach.
Exactly.
One of the important things is, and the motivators is that, and you talk about this in your book, the building your book of business is an essential part of your value and your career safety net. So it's really a must, right? So how is having a book of business so essential, or why is it so essential for career stability?
I'll tell you a cautionary tale. I was about 8 years out of law school when the firm I was working for closed or announced it was closing. And all of the lawyers started looking for jobs. And we were all really good lawyers. And I did not have any worry that I was going to find another job. But I actually found it a little bit more difficult than I thought, because the people that were really of value at the 8-year level are people who have started to develop a book of business, or at least shown the potential to do so.
Mhm.
And I had done neither. I hadn't shown the potential and I hadn't done anything about business development. So I had a Scarlett O'Hara moment, if you know what that means. And I said, as God is my witness, if I get another job, I'm going to have a book of business, because it protects you, Doug.
Mhm.
If I had had a book of business, I would have had no trouble finding a new job. The people with business got swallowed up fast. It's an
From the
insurance policy.
And from the owner's side, if you are an 8th-year associate, you're making pretty good money. So you better have some clients so I can afford to pay you what you're worth instead of just taking a risk on you.
Well, I've seen it go both ways. I've seen lawyers actively discouraged from bringing in business because the reason they're there is to do the work of the partners. So sometimes you have to fight to carve out your own marketing time and to make the commitment to bring in your own business, because you're almost fighting against your own firm to do it.
Yeah, I see that. And I do see that where, especially these days, that, sometimes the firm has so much business that, just do the work.
Exactly. Yes.
So if somebody finds themselves in that situation, what things could they do to, still provide some of that safety net, even if they can't build a big book? Say they're in a big corporate practice where, they can't do the rainmaking. What else could they do to protect themselves?
Well, I think they really have to take a look at their career and what they want it to be. And if they're working in a culture where personal rainmaking is discouraged because there's so much work that the firm has, that's going to be detrimental to the career of the individual lawyer. And it's our job to be the curator of our own careers, to guard them, to not get pulled in by other people who want us to help them succeed. That can be a trap. So I would take a look around me. I would see whether this firm is promoting people, whether people are making partner without having a book of business.
Mhm.
And if they're not, then I would question how I'm going to make partner without a book of business. And I might have a conversation with the partnership about that, depending on the scenario.
I love that. And it kind of circles back to the whole values piece. I remember early in my career, when I kept, reaching out of how can I improve? I want to do more. And finally one of my mentors, like, I can't decide that for you. You have to decide. And so part of it is taking control of your own career and saying, based on my values and my knowledge, skills, and abilities, where do I want my career to go? Just as if you were having a business strategy, one for yourself.
That is an excellent point, Doug. I think when we graduate from law school, we're so used to having a curriculum and career advisors and all of that stuff that we don't really know what to do when we're suddenly in the mix.
Mm-hmm. I've made many pivots. You've made many pivots, and I know I've heard it and you've heard it. What do you say to somebody who says, it's just too late for me?
Well, I wouldn't want to say on a podcast the word that I might use, but I would say that's not true. And I have many examples of that not being true. And one of the most ridiculous examples is my favorite one. I was coaching a young man. I had been hired by his law firm to help him increase his billable hours, be a better delegator, and be a better time manager. And we were working on those things. And in our second to last session, this is a 30-year-old guy. He said to me, he gave a big sigh. I guess if I had to do it all over again, I would have become a math teacher. And I said, well, why do you think it's too late for you to be a math teacher now? And he didn't answer me, but I knew the reason: the expense, the investment, the law school thing. And since I wasn't there as his career coach, we kept working on the stuff that we were working on. But when I came to the final session, he told me that he had talked to his wife and he had made a decision and he was going to become a math teacher. And he was at an inflection point, Doug. And I think this is really important for anybody to think about, whether you're 20 years into a career or 5 years into a career. What do you want to spend the next 10 years or 20 years doing? If you're unhappy now and you have a chance to make a choice now that could make the rest of your life better, it's never too late to do that. I changed careers in my 40s and my 50s. I wrote this book when I was in my 50s, a first-time author. I have a chapter about it not being too late, where I give examples of many people who have done things. I went to law school with a woman in her 50s. She was just getting started and she had a great career. It's not too late. I swear.
I love that. I love that. Boy, we could probably go on and on, and because I just love this conversation and people so need to hear it. But alas, we do have time limitations. If somebody wanted to find your book and get in touch with you, where would they do that?
My book's on Amazon, Winning in Your Own Court. And I'm also on LinkedIn, Dena Lefkowitz. I post a lot there. So please connect with me, follow me. And my website is achievementbydesign.com. And I would really love to hear from you.
That's great. And I would encourage, you to go ahead and reach out, have a conversation. Taking the first step is just that. It's the first step. It doesn't commit you to anything. It doesn't cause you to throw away everything that you've done. It just allow yourself to take care of yourself a bit. And I think my thought is the importance of being intentional in your career decisions, to continuing to do what you're doing. And whether you're selling your firm or doing your succession plan or you're changing your career, these are things that you have not been trained to do as a lawyer. And if you had a client who was trying to do what you do for them on their own, you'd tell them they were out of their minds. So maybe allow yourself to overcome the thing that Dena talked about, which is actually seeking out help, because you only got one shot to do it, and fouling up is a bad thing. So that's my thought. Dena, any last parting thoughts for our audience today?
I really couldn't improve on what you just said. Thank you, Doug.
I am so glad that we had this time together and we got to know each other and you shared your wisdom. I want to thank Answering Legal for the network for sponsoring our show. And if you have thoughts, questions, or topics that you'd like us to cover in future shows, please go ahead and reach out. So that's it for today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Doug Brown, the law firm leadership coach. Dena Lefkowitz, my guest. Thank you so much for being here. Bye for now.